Hello, welcome to Travel Unpacked, a podcast by Collette. I want to say thank you to our listeners who've been showing us support and listening to our episodes so far. We're super excited. This is your host, Nicole. Josh and Kelsey are not with me this week. I am actually on the road in Prince Edward Island. This is going to be an episode from the road, a little bit different for us this week. And I am joined by Collette's CEO and my father, Dan Sullivan. We're on a family trip in PEI. So I just want to say hi, Dad.
Hey, Nicole.
So he actually is celebrating this year at Collette. He is celebrating his 50th anniversary of working at Collette, which is funny because he always tells me he's about 45 years old. So it doesn't add up, but he is celebrating a big milestone this year. So tell me, what was Collette like when you first came in 1973?
Well, it was a small company. There was a third person in the Pawtucket office and the eighth person at Collette. We had a province office then, and actually we had a Worcester office too. We had just opened in 1970. So it's a very small company. And we're actually in Prince Edward Island this week, with the family trip, the Sullivan family. And that was one of the places my father sent me first. I came in June of 73. And in late August, he sent me to go to Newfoundland. But I ended up, before I went to Newfoundland, to Prince Edward Island, and set up a tour here, which became very popular. And we're back here. And so we're in our 50th year. We're actually celebrating Prince Edward Island with Collette, as a destination. So coincidence, yeah.
Yeah, and most people know Prince Edward Island because of Anne of Green Gables. It's probably the most famous story to come out of this beautiful location. And I've been a huge, longtime fan of Anne. I've read the books. I watched the movies. I've watched the remakes. I tend to like the version from the 1980s the best myself. But it's so interesting to be here because you stop by these places that come to life. Yesterday, just being at the Lake of Shining Waters, being at the birthplace of Lucy Maud Montgomery. We just did that yesterday on our tour, and it was so fun. And I get to be here with my kids, seeing them experience it for the first time.
It was great. Yeah.
What would you say about travel from 1973 today? Just what I know, it was a smaller company back then, but what would you say are the biggest changes you've seen in touring, but also at Collette over the years?
Travelers want a more immersive experience today. They really want to get into the local culture, which we're doing all over the world, and including here at Prince Edward Island. And yes, they want to see the Anne of Green Gables, but when we came here in 73, we were out to Lucy Montgomery's and the Campbell family home too. There we went yesterday, and now the immersive experiences, like and the kids and everyone on the tour got to plant potatoes, the blue potatoes here, and that's kind of the experiences, of what they do. And the night before, we shucked oysters, and they showed you how to shuck oysters. So I think there's a bigger emphasis at Collette on experience in the destination and what the people, what the culture is here, and what the traditions are in Prince Edward. And that's really what we do around the world. That's why we're on the ground all over the world, because you have to be here to understand, to see it, and to make sure it's authentic and local. And that makes people want, it's why we travel,
Yes, and we did a cooking competition too. After we were part of the shucking of the oysters the other night, we had a cooking competition, which on a family trip, it's very competitive. Everybody was sure their group would win. My 5-year-old was on the team that did win. But I think that's part of the fun. Even, we're on a family trip, but on a group trip, you bond with the other people in your group, maybe people that you have known for a long time, some people that you're just meeting, and you have these experiences and you get some skin in the game, hoping that you win. We were able to kind of get in the kitchen, flavor the mussels. We had some PEI mussels, flavor them ourselves, cook them the way we wanted to, and then everybody got to enjoy them. And it was a cook-off. The chef ended up choosing the winning mussel. So it was a lot of fun. And we're doing this family trip this year, and I wanted to give a little background on family trips in general because we've been doing them for a very long time. My grandfather, who's passed away in 2005, Dan Sullivan Sr., our former chairman of the board, he wanted to travel with his family. He wanted to travel with his children and then his grandchildren. So we were doing intergenerational travel in the 90s. I was a teenager, and we went to Ireland, to Scotland, to Italy, and we would trace our family history. So we're also doing that on this trip. We're tapping into our family history. Can you tell us about that, just that element of the family trips? Because it still continues to this day, long after he passed away. It's something he really wanted the family to do, to get together and travel, and we're continuing it. So what do you think about that?
Well, yeah, and he actually started the first one we ever did was in '64 in the New York World's Fair that we went to. That didn't really trace the steps, but it was traveling as a family, and so and then of course Ireland and Scotland and Prince Edward Island all had ancestry roots. So that was very, just tremendous. And it's great to travel with the family because it just really is great for the family dynamics, where they get to younger generation gets to experience travel, and all of us get to experience, the family tree and family history, if you look at that. But just no matter where you go in the world, because we've done other destinations like Williamsburg and DC and things like that, which now it may not tie into the ancestry, but it does create that bond of the family where you have 3, sometimes even 4 generations traveling together. And it really, it's just so much fun because you're together for that length of time, usually 8 or 9 days. But it's all varying lengths from 5 to 15 on family trips, and it's just such a great experience for the family. And they remember it, as you did, Nicole, being here in Prince Edward Island with your brother and your sister, but many of the family members and your cousins and things, and your uncles and aunts, and of course your grandfather and grandmother. That makes a huge difference, and it's someone you never forget.
Oh, absolutely. When we went to Ireland, I think I was 15 or 16. It was my first family trip. I was not born in 1964 for that one, but it was my first family trip. And I remember, you're a teenager, so you don't necessarily feel this like pull to research your ancestry. I mean, most of the time, and I didn't, but I took it with me because I know the origin of my name was not always Sullivan. My maiden name is Sullivan. It wasn't always Sullivan. It was O'Sullivan Bear. And I learned in Scotland about our family crest and then, my dad's not very Italian. If you meet him and he tells you he's an 8th Italian, it's kind of hysterical because he's the most Irish looking person ever. But there's this little bit of Italian is it Descalza? Is that the name?
Descalza,
in Italy.
yeah.
So I took these things with me. I know on my mother's side, she's very Italian, and I know a little about that, but it's so interesting to learn all of these things that make you who you are, and to know that when my ancestors came to America, we dropped the O and the name, it became Sullivan. And it's just an interesting story to be part of. And on that first trip, we met up with, I want to say 35 O'Sullivans who lived in Ireland, who are our ancestors. So there was 70, because I think we had 35 in our group. So about 70 Sullivans in a room together. And it was interesting. We'd never met them. They were complete strangers, but there was that feeling of connection, and you could see some similarities or some ties. And it's a very interesting thing, because even as a teenager, you might think it won't matter to you, but I've taken it with me. I've thought about it, and I understand my history a little bit. I can talk about it with probably more knowledge than a lot of people can. And I know that's why a lot of our travelers travel too, just to see where they're from.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm here with my kids, so I will say it's been interesting, because I wasn't sure if we would join the trip this year, only because my children are very young and my youngest is 5, and it's been incredibly interesting to have him along for the ride. Now, Prince Edward Island, aside from Anne of Green Gables, what would you say are the highlights that bring people again and again? Because there's a lot of tours we used to do. You said you did this in that first year in 1973, that you were here in Prince Edward Island, but there's a lot of things we did back then. Like, we used to go to Atlantic City. We had a bunch of things we don't really do anymore. So this one has stayed. Obviously, there's more to this place that just keeps people interested in coming back. What do you think it is?
Well, I think it's coming up the Maritimes and the beauty of the Prince Edward Island. They say Island has 40 shades of green, Prince Edward Island 39. It's so green. Going out to the beaches, we'll be out to Cavendish Beach tomorrow. And, just the drives along the coast and being able to experience the beautiful, and of course the stories of Anne of Green Gables bring it to life, and others too, but that's one of the most famous. And of any type novel. And really, you have people from all over the world come because of that book. But really, that our ancestry was here and our family history is tied to that. But no matter what, even if your family history isn't, it's just seeing, the experience in and how they live. And, even if you're, not from the coast and you don't really have mussels or oysters, it's so good to see how they do it and try it. And then so many great things that people get to try coming to a destination like this. So many, because when you travel, you want to do things that are different. You don't want to do always the same thing. So tomorrow night we'll be at do Glasgow lobster supper, which goes way back over 100 years. And really the lobster suppers here, because that's a tradition here. So catching lobsters and seeing that. And of course, we've seen that all throughout the drives throughout the coastlines of Prince Edward Island. You see the mussel farms and the oyster farms, and you see the fishermen bringing in the lobster and of course the fish. It's kind of just such a great thing. And of course, this combines New Brunswick and Nova Scotia too, where you do the Cabot Trail and some of the beautiful, famous, coastline and Alexander Graham Bell's museum. So this tour just isn't about Prince Edward Island. It's about the Maritimes and New Brunswick and Prince Edward Island and Nova Scotia combined to make this one of the most beautiful destinations in North America and really arguably in the world,
What's the name of this tour?
The Maritimes, if you look it up, that's the word that you'll find there. Because and we combine all those. Years ago we do a separate tour in Nova Scotia in New Brunswick, and that would be different. And then Prince Edward Island be its own, because now it's where most of our travels came just from New England then. Now, one of the big changes is that they come from Australia and New Zealand and Canada and all over the US, not just New England, to take this tour.
Yes. Yep. So this tour that we're on as a family is Maritimes Coastal Wonders.
Coastal Wonders, yeah. That's it.
Yep. And it goes to Halifax. It goes to Peggy's Cove, which we didn't do. We did this as a family trip in the 90s with a lot of my cousins, and now everyone has their kids of their own. So just to bring the generations back has been great, but we didn't do Peggy's Cove. It was my first time. Was it your first time being at Peggy's Cove too?
No, I've been there as tour guide because I tour guide here in the early 70s as well. And doing that and doing Peggy's Cove was always the tremendous the rocks and the coastal scenery there. And, it is with the lighthouse at Peggy's Cove and the waves rushing up against the rocks. Even when you get rough seas, it's kind of even more adventurous when you have rough seas, because it is your typical. It's one of the most famous and photographed spots of any maritime scene globally, Peggy's Cove. Yeah.
Oh, it was so beautiful. We got gorgeous photos there, and the kids loved walking on the rocks. Of course, there's the dark rocks. We were warned, do not go near the dark rocks. They're slippery. But it was so beautiful. And you look out and you just see all the beauty of this area in one place. So Peggy's Cove was a huge, huge highlight for me, because I didn't remember it because we hadn't done it before. But Prince Edward Island, I remembered, but coming back as an adult compared to when I came as a young teen, I feel it's just different. Like Anne of Green Gables, the whole island feels different for me. Just it holds more imagination if possible, and it just holds. This place has always held a special place in my heart. And John, my husband, he had never been here before, and he feels like at least where we are in Charlottetown feels very much like very New Englandy in a sense, and everyone's so friendly, and it's really standing out as a place that we would come to again for sure, because it's just been a really positive experience. We've had some rainy weather, but it's still been absolutely wonderful just walking around and exploring the area. All right. Well, it's been really fun being live here from PEI with my dad, with Dan Sullivan, our CEO, and just hearing about this destination over the years, his career, how Collette, just how it was and when he came in 1973 and how it is today. We have, back then, I think it was Regional Motor Coach, and now we have tours to all 7 continents. Collette is a global company in Australia and Canada. So it's a whole different touring. The tourism industry has grown, and travelers just want to get out and explore. So it's changed, but I can see just also as we've done these family trips over the years and everything, how much has stayed true to just our values as a company, who we are, what we stand for. And that's been very special to be part of as the company's grown and changed in my experience. But I'm sure you can say too, right from the 70s to today, there's a lot that remains. There's a lot that stays the same no matter how much things change.
That's true.
So thank you for joining us on this very special episode from the road of Travel Unpacked.
And remember, don't forget to pack your camera in case you end up at Green Gables.
And we'll see you next time, listeners. Bye.
Bye.